it hasn't started. You go visit it, it looks very sparse. It doesn't look like a comfy little library, a neighborhood library.
We're here to solve affordable housing issues. Right?
Yeah. But what I'm saying is this is sort of very similar, because we're coming with the mindset that the developer is a nasty guy, and he's trying to gouge us. But I think that article points at a very good point. The fixed costs are so high that he has to spread out the additional cost of discount over many more units to make a profit. That's sort of the takeaway.
Not necessarily with Somerset, pardon me for interjecting, but because...
Well, Somerset is a different guy.
Yeah,
right.
Right.
I don't know about Somerset. I'm not going to go there.
Not in their defense, no, but their fixed costs are done.
Yeah. No, Somerset is a different story. I don't know all the numbers there. But I'm saying developers in general, right?
Not necessarily. It depends on the
circumstances.
site, the soil, what the problem is.
I'm trying to be gracious in their regard, because I think the article made a good point.
Yeah.
I want to give you,
price.
since you're in Middletown, it cost us an additional $2 million to furbish the library and build it out. And that's for something that we're not putting up a building.
We could have built an entire library for $4 to $5 million.
So your argument that building exists already, that's
No, I meant when he does when they're complaining about the affordable housing and what they need to do.
He's not the one complaining, but
no, I meant
Somerset.
Yeah.
Zucker is completely even. Toll Brothers paid for all the rest of the building. He's home scot-free.
Oh, yeah. Don't get into economics, because the guy is made out like a bandit, but that's fine. I wish I could have done
but it isn't, sometimes it just isn't that hard for builders that have a certain amount. I did the Gables at Holmdel. I did that by myself with 2 other people with Pinnacle Communities. They broke even after the first 18 houses, or so you would believe. But they had plenty of investors from Westchester County. They had plenty of investors from other places. I mean, you look at Pier Village, they have investors from Israel. So it really depends on the site, who the investors are, what type of structure they're trying to build, and the materials that are used, and the quality of the contractors and the particular designer at that time. It's all subject to the date, the time, the weather, the situation, the global, the code, whatever's going on. So it isn't every building. And you also have builders in Hazlitt off of Middle Road. I think one is putting something up near Pool. I mean, some of these solutions could come from, I mean, if it's too late by now, it's too late.
I don't think it's too late.
There are some solutions with smaller builders.
So,
if the entertainment is possible.
I appreciate that. And I threw them a bone because of the article made a lot of sort of sense to me. If your fixed costs are very high, you're going to have to spread out whatever discount you give on other units over many more units to make yourself whole. That was sort of the logic of that article, which I liked. But I'm not a developer, so I'm not sure.
And that article sounds very much to me like Ryan Homes in Tom's River that I just sold a couple of units in. It has nothing to do with me. I'm just a realtor driving people around. But if it's acceptable to those people, and we've all seen, there's a lot of people in this row that have seen those units and understand it. That article kind of speaks to me like a Middle America article. So sometimes you just can't be fooled by what particular types of builders that have something in mind based on their architectural plans, what's going to be the cutoff point for them to make a profit.
So let's look at it. The reason
it's very particular.
Fair enough. My approach here is to look at our costs.
Right, I get it.
And look at it from our perspective, not the developers. So from our perspective, a running cost, annual cost, is somewhere around $6 million running. Okay, so that's only taking into account education. Now, to put that in perspective, I think our budget for the township is just the township, not the schools. I guess the schools and the township are close to like 80 million or something like that, right? Yeah.
Schools, township, and county.
And county. So, this is a significant percent of that, right? It's not 10%, it's like 8%. It's still significant. Okay, so now we get to an alternative way, and I try to make it as succinct as possible. Holmdel subsidizes the developer to build only the required 110 units, spread amongst 7 locations, because no one, I think the law says you cannot build a ghetto. You gotta have it spread out, which makes eminent sense. Okay, so also Ralph pointed out early on that this 110 number is done through negotiations between the developers' lawyers, our lawyers, the judge, and so it's a little amorphous. However, it's a very good number to use as a proxy for the arguments we're making here. It'll be roughly in that zone if everyone thought who was in that meeting that that would meet our obligation. So let's go through one unit. Let's say each of these market price units would run at $300,000.
That's if you're selling them.
If you're selling them at market, right? But that would be roughly what he would expect from a profit standpoint. If you take the rental income and PV it all, you'll get to the same. So it's not a bad proxy. Let's say the low income housing discount is 50%. I don't know what it is, but let's say it's 50. It's, I think, a generous discount. So each unit has to come up with 150,000. Someone has to come up with that money. Now the developer says I got to build 600 units for that 110. What we are saying is, what would it cost the town for that 150,000? We all pay mortgages, so some of us did. To get 150 at Holmdel's cost of money is roughly per month $715. Get the 150.
What interest rate did you presume?
I used muni rates, but you could jack it up. I used 4%. For Holmdel, that's not a bad number.
It's high.
Fair enough. I'd rather be conservative.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're getting $715. And now, how much does that turn out to be running if we mechanize this in some way with the developer, right? We would be paying the developer for every 110 units every month $715. So you just do the simple math, 12 months times 110 times 715, roughly $1 million. So for roughly $1 million, we will have our obligation met, right?
Let me, if I make sure I don't miss a decimal point.
Yeah.
So if it's 150,000 a unit, 110 units, the upfront cost, because the developer wants it, it'd be 15 million.
Right. So
As opposed to 6 million every year for forever.
precisely. Just take that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a number that's stuck in my head too. The break even is 2 years. 2.5 years. It's unbelievably expensive for us to do what the township is proposing to do. It's even if you take the 0.6 number, it's 3.5 times more expensive to do it the way the township is doing it. At one, it's like 6 times more expensive. So what I would, I wrote a letter to the township. I spoke to them individually. They all agree with me, but I found myself in freehold, sitting in front of the judge. Scott and I were the only, and it was about to happen. It was about to happen. It didn't matter. I encouraged them to engage us, talk to the town, see whether we have other ideas to approach it. Nothing. There was no discussion. They feel hamstrung that they're caught in this box and they can't get out. I don't think they're evil people. I just think they don't know what to do. They think this is the way.
Are you talking about the township committee people?
Committee people.
Okay.
No, well, actually, I look at it differently. I think it's the township attorney for affordable housing is negotiating with this unit that sued the town, and that's why we're in court, okay? So the attorney hired for the town, he's a affordable housing attorney, so he's solving it a very conventional way. He's negotiating with the person suing it.
Actually, we're not being sued. This is all proactive stuff. Because of the court case of 2014, they said that, the court said that any town that wanted to participate in a plan would be indemnified, would be protected against a builder's remedy. So Holmdel submitted a plan and is actively participating in order to be protected from builder's remedy. Unfortunately, it appears to me that what they're doing is they're protecting themselves from the builder's remedy by just giving the builders what they want, which is very bizarre. But so we are participating in the plan in order to be protected from a builder's remedy.
Okay, so I might have been overzealous
Yeah,
using my words there.
It's a legal
But
process.
I'm reading, if you read the notice of
Yes.
November 15th, okay?
Yes.
And they talk about
It's a legal process.
the court case of March 10th, okay?
Tuesday.
Affordable housing strategy set forth a settlement. This is a settlement agreement with
Fair housing.
with the fair housing. The other thing I want to point out, and this takes it from 1987 up to 2025. 2025, that's in 7 years.
Yeah, it's not that far away.
That's not so far away. We're gonna be back in this mess by the time we get out of this mess. I just,
What I'd like to do, right? We
It's
are.
not that far away, is it?
it's not very far away.
Yeah, I want to create a sense of urgency because I think this is extremely important. So we're on the cusp of this happening. And we need to somehow bang and knock on the doors of the township committee to think out of the box and try a different way. Because it's going to change the nature of our town. I don't think everyone understands these are family rental units. You know, I mean, Scott came up with a very good observation. He said, who rents? Normally the younger families who don't have the wealth yet or the stability yet. So you're going to tend to have younger children entering the school, and they'll all be in the same bulge. You're going to have this bulge moving through the python. You're going to have, if you're going to get that many schools coming in, you're going to have to build a new village school, a new middle school, a new high school, because there are only 3,000 students in the school system.
I was at the Board of Ed and I asked them, do they do any proactive planning on this? Okay? No, they're reactive. If they get more students, then they worry about the problem. We just approved spending $40 million, doesn't mean a hoot to this problem. They're not looking down the road what this might mean. Yes, Jeff?
I've heard muttering pushback, just including in the foyer of the last township meeting, from some committee members that, well, this isn't exactly how it works. Basically implying you are forced to have more dilution in the units. The housing authority wants them spread among many more units than you're implying could be done here. Do we know if that's, I know this is fungible, I know there's nothing in stone, but is that a legitimate pushback? Do we know?
I don't know, I'm not legal authority.
Because that's what they just keep saying, they just keep throwing that right back at
But
you.
what I would say is, from a common sense standpoint, right? If the objective of the Supreme Court is to make fair and equitable housing available, paying $300,000 for a rental unit is probably not fair and equitable housing for a person who can only afford $150. If we meet our obligation, the argument falls away, right? I think it's in the interest of the Fair Housing Committee that Karen was talking about to understand that there's another way which communities will embrace, right? Communities will embrace this approach because it's less disruptive to the communities, it's less expensive, and their programs will be far more successful. So I can't understand why that argument would have any water.
Well, they don't want the blight pockets that you referenced.
No, but what I'm
before.
saying is when you say blight pockets, right? That's why I said 7 locations, right? If you take 7 times 15, you get 105. You got your numbers, and you put only 15 per location. You're not getting blight. You see what I'm saying?
I talked to Donna Viero about his plan, and she said it can't be done because there's no mechanism for implementing it.
They don't want to think outside the box.
Yeah, you know
They
what?
always-
She's an administrator, I don't
People
care.
to bid. They can always ask for developers to bid against each other.
Yeah.
Township won't put the.
Put us in power.
They'll
You
do
know?
it in our best interest.
Yeah, put it in nine. Sorry.
That's right.
A different piece of it. I would suggest one thing that you need to separate a little bit
Yeah.
in the arithmetic. Separate the 110 from the 500 other. In particular, however you implement this, you're gonna end up with the 110.
Right.
And the cost to support the kids in schools for those will exist regardless.
That's true.
So the
That's
net
true.
additional cost is not the 6, but maybe it's 5.
I agree, and in my
That's a
letter to them, I did
secondary.
it that way.
That's a secondary point.
A very good point, and actually in my letter to the township, I actually did it incrementally.
Yeah.
I took that as like a fixed cost anyway.
Yeah.
And I could definitely
And
do
there,
that very
and
good.
another tidbit, the township has had, again for decades, an affordable housing trust fund, which was dominantly funded by developer contributions, because if you build 1 or 2 houses, you have to make a contribution to that fund. And that fund has been used to support the maintenance of the existing units and all that kind of stuff. That fund currently has in it, my understanding is $3 to $4 million.
That's correct, Eric mentioned that, yeah.
So you have a starting bucket of money that you can use to do some of these things.
Yeah.
A builder told me last year that on rental units, they're only obligated to keep it at an affordable price for 20 years, and after that, it's a cash bonanza for them.
Oh, that's a nice.
I don't know if that's
nice
true or
thing.
not, I was shocked, I had never heard this before, but that's what I heard. And his family had these rental units, and this was his retirement, his father set them up for his retirement.
I don't know if,
Where's my-
I can only partially comment to that. In the round 1 and round 2 that Holmdel did with sale units, the restriction on those, which was consistent with the round 1 and round 2 rules, was that they had to be such for 20 years. So Holmdel went back to, and it's mentioned in that table A, that extension of existing controls.
Yeah, right.
That's where that comes from. On 100 of the existing sold units which have affordable income limits on them, they said to the person, if we give you, I think it may have been $1,000 or something, a nominal fee, will you permit us, will you,
Stay.
I'll
Let it
extend
go.
the deed restriction on how this unit is held. And they agreed yes to do so. So Holmdel gets credit by extending another 30 years, some units that were originally 20 years. And in that way, continuing to keep those units affordable. I don't know what the rule of rentals is in that regard.
The other thing I want to throw some salt on here is when they did the pilots, they had their financial advisors look at what the revenue stream should be for coming into Holmdel. I don't believe they had any foggy idea of what this was going to cost the town. So the pilots, as you know, are exempt from any increases due to the town or to the Board of Ed. So if you own a unit there, you're exempt from any of these problems.
It's a very good point when it comes to this specific.
Actually, it's 35 years of
That's another,
Numbers
just
always change,
Huh?
It's a 35-year window, which it's actually 30 years, but it doesn't start on day 1. It starts when they reach a certain amount of completion. So that, if you're bringing that one up, a question I have, and I don't know the answer, on the pilot, they made a calculation when they set the pilot with regard to the existing building. What happens if you add a 6th floor, a 7th floor?
I have no
What
idea.
happens to the pilot?
Oh.
Or
I
is
think
that
that should be
hotel going to be
incremental.
tax-free?
yeah, I think that should be incremental.
No,
But I don't know.
I don't think the town's.
No one's looked at it.
I don't think the town's.
It just
gonna-
doesn't.
200-room hotel? They don't have to pay anything?
You think the assessment on the building will go up once you
No,
build that?
the pilot isn't based on assessment.
Right, it's not based on assessment.
If I may go back in, if you, so you're
Ralph, we have a
proposing,
good question to ask at the next township meeting.
you're proposing, you're theoretically proposing 7 sets of 15 units of the pure reduced, the low-income ones.
Right.
But again, I'm going to come back like a broken record in what they're throwing around. Apparently, Karen, you may, the Fair Share Housing Authority does, whether it's 2 or 500, they don't want a concentration of low-income units together.
But I'm saying that you're not going to get that.
Well, that's,
See,
aren't
because
you saying
you're
7 or
surrounding
15?
it, no.
What?
15 units are surrounded by other normal residential units.
But they're together.
Seven separate sites. Okay, look at it this
Seven
way.
separate sites of 15.
Yeah,
But those
Geographically
15,
geographically
He's saying
separate.
it's dispersed.
but
Yes,
those,
they're
Should be in-
dispersed
no.
geographically.
No, but he's saying each unit should be interspersed.
no, they
Where?
want the units dispersed. They, from
No,
what I
that's not true.
understand.
You go to Orchards,
Sorry.
you go to Orchards and you'll see all of them concentrated in one block.
Yeah,
Seven
and
they are-
Westford did
yeah.
the same thing.
They're in blocks
segregated off.
of, they're in blocks of 4 and 6. They're not in.
But I don't know if that's
And
what
that
they
was-
want now.
that was legal.
That might have been
Don't
told.
know. Well,
Yeah, it should've been done.
one other thing that got mentioned,
Yeah, it is done.
reference to, I think Karen said it, this is a proactive, positive process that's in the court's hands. It's a legal process. At least 2 developers have intervened in the process because they want to have their properties involved.
Potter Farms, I think, was one of them.
It's not clear who all of them are and who all the interests are, but that apparently has, shall we say, muddied the waters and complicated the process.
And, I do
Well,
think
that's a good
that,
thing, it indicates that people want to get into the process.
There's always somebody who
Which
wants
means
to
that
make
gives
a
the power to the town when they're looking for bidders to sell the precious 100 units.
I think here's the thing, right? Our house is on fire. This is the way I look at it. Our house is on fire. When your house is on fire, are you going to fight?
How much you gonna
No,
pay?
that's a-
Yeah.
There's no fire department.
Yeah, there's a fire department either. We got rid of that thing. The way I look at it, we're looking at a process which is, we're looking at a process which is totally amorphous. There is no clear definition of what core requirements are, right?
That's correct.
So just be aggressive. Come up with a plan, say, yeah, we're meeting our numbers, we're meeting our diversity. Yeah, maybe, we have not put all those units right in one spot.
You're entirely correct.
Yeah,
There's
you
confusion, take advantage of it.
You don't just bend over and say, oh, yeah, we're done.
That's what we're doing.
And there is a lot
Yeah, be
of,
better.
Honestly, I think,
I'm gonna bend over this way.
Listen,
Your Highness, not anything else, please.
I think this, Ernie, you've done a great service for the town. I think this meeting is really useful. I think you've gone out of your way to present this to the township
I'm doing it out of
committee.
selfish reason. I don't
But
want to leave it down.
I think it's time CILU spend some budget, take an ad out, prominently somewhere, and lay it on the line in big letters right now.
what would you say on that?
I would say Holmdel Township Committee, I know this hasn't been easy, I know, but this is what we really believe you should stop right now and look at, and this should be communicated to the town, the wider population now.
Jake, I know you're an excellent writer. Take a crack at writing it. An editorial piece. I will see if I can get the board.
I'll question one word you used, add. Unfortunately, most ads these days are ignored. Unfortunately, there isn't a good community, a readily available community newspaper that
So then
anybody
you gotta
pays
do a mailer.
attention to. Yeah, so it ends up being a mailer that means $5,000 or
The last time we did
$6,000.
this was, I think, in 2012, that we had a mailer sent out.
What about the
There's so much that we can, even about the
There's a
township,
leadership
like,
of what?
at one
Couple
meeting,
hundred?
Eric Hines said, well, I want to make, talking to Andy Byer, he says, well, there's some confusion about whether these have to be new units. And Andy Byer says, no, they don't have to be new units. And then when we were at the meeting the other day, I was talking to, I heard somebody say, oh, yeah, they all have to be new units. And the same with, Andy Byer said that one of the criteria is used is access to sewers. And then another meeting, Patty Pertudo says, oh, yeah, they can make you hook up the sewers anywhere you want. But Andy Byer says, no, they can't. And so, the township committee is out there spreading misinformation. Some members are, and making this fear thing, oh, they can make you hook up to sewers and all this, where Andy Byer is like a little bit more calm about it.
Well,
I
it's
think if you
basically.
go back to Andy Byer's presentation that's on the YouTube video, there are prerequisites for where they can build. They have to have access to public transportation.
Public transportation is a big one, all the
And other types of support services. It makes no sense to put affordable housing in the middle of, let's say, Holmdel Park, where you have to have a car, you have to have the means to be able to get from place A to place B. There is nothing nearby, so you have to have your own transportation. So, yes.
Oh, then how are they
Oh, I
going to
know.
get buses to pick them up?
Before Pat Abravanduto was no
And
longer
North
on the
Yards.
township committee,
Is
he
there a
would
bus
wave
route
his
into
hands
Belmont,
around,
public bus?
basically, from my
How are you going to pick up?
brain, saying that if we don't do this immediately, then the fair housing people are gonna make us
Build is right.
build more.
Yeah.
And I really couldn't figure out what he was talking about, what more was, or,
Well, we're getting an early discount, apparently.
You see, this is where this is an amorphous thing, right?
Yes,
But it was
I'm
so-
not disagreeing.
it was so woozy that I,
Yes,
Yeah,
Woody's
how-
right.
I think the
was like throwing Jello at the
issue
wall.
is they're trying to be proactive. What fair housing people. And there are towns whose approach is stalling and dragging it out. So since they don't want everybody stalling,
They're gonna reward.
they're
the
trying to
early.
reward those who deals do it easier,
Right.
sooner.
has, rhetorical question number 79, has anybody talked to any of the other towns about what their tactics
Plans
are? Or they all want to keep it under?
I've heard some of the others, including Republican-run towns, are telling them, go screw, we're not gonna see you in court, we're not dealing with it.
They said on the Fair Share Housing site that 50 towns have settled, and I'm just curious what those 50 towns are that
Yeah,
have
there's
settled.
656 towns in the state or some such.
And some
Well,
are litigating.
What makes, I think it's basically public knowledge now, what makes this process even more complicated is there could be some conflicts of interest within the township committee with some of these problems.
Yeah, I don't want to go there, but
Well, that just makes
One
it even
thing
more.
it sounds like it's real, but.
Yeah. it
Yeah,
does.
one thing that impacts it in that regard is the availability of undeveloped land. So take a town like Fairhaven, where there's nothing.
Yeah.
So their obligation is very small, and it'd be much easier for them to settle. There are other places in North Jersey where there's probably not an underbuilt acre. So that
Is what Karen's saying, you could take some building that is not currently a affordable facility and turn it into one?
Yeah, well, it
Absolutely.
seems like you should be
Yes.
able to do that.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great idea.
Yes, because, I mean, Eric Hines at that, I think it was the June 27th meeting, said to Andy Byer, does it have to be new buildings? And he said, no, it doesn't. So, and of course,
Frank's nursery.
well, that's wouldn't.
Frank's Nursery is in Hazlet.
Or is that in Hazlet? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
it's
But a building like that, a site like
You
that.
can't make
could-
that into a house.
How does environmentally sensitive land, which I don't know if it's still designated that, play into this?
It does.
There's certain state restrictions
They
as to what you
don't,
can
they
do.
can't,
You can't put affordable housing on.
You can't put anything on.
you can't put it on,
Yes.
okay.
Although we said that about, we said that about Lucid property also, and they
Yes.
skirted that whole restriction on sewer connection, so.
Yes.
I kind of think our tactic might be, just, we need to start thinking outside the box. We have 110 units or around them because they keep saying it's going to be changing and they're negotiating. And also you get credits for senior housing, you get credits for veterans, you get, there's a certain number of credits you get. Well, let's see how we can accommodate our obligation in a reasonable, aesthetically pleasing, keeping the texture of our
So,
environment.
so I know we
consistent.
tend to get into very long-winded, and this group likes to talk. One of the things I thought we could wrap this meeting up on is brainstorming and actionable items. Okay, it's great to talk about, it's great to understand the issue, but we have to come up with ideas and put some action plans together.
Jay's idea is one, put it on the table at least.
As I
So
said,
sending
Jay,
in-
Honestly, this is
information,
happening,
thing
excuse
to-
me, this is
yeah.
happening now, so the action, I mean,
Yeah.
it's
How do
like-
you put a stop to what's happening right now?
you
I
need
don't
shock,
think
we know firsthand you need shock and awe.
The ways that I've seen worked is you fill the township committee room with very angry people,
And most
articulate
people
but
don't know
angry.
about it.
And you will see a change, right? I've seen it happen.
The only thing that.
The other one
works
is
is the
legal.
lawsuit.
Yeah, the lawsuit
And
works.
people-
tonight?
We can't vote them out
How about we
because
try to
they're
push it-
entrenched.
I don't know what the time frame, how it works with the time frame, but we push to have some kind of a citizens group work on this plan. So that we'll at least get information,
Called CILU
good
and
information.
SHB.
You know, like some
The
ad
problem
hoc
I have
committee
here,
through the town.
we have a
Only
time
if the
pressure.
town, if the town appoints
March,
a committee,
I
you
think
get
it's March
resources
5th, by the
you don't
way.
otherwise
I
have.
thought in last
Get
township
access to
committee it said
information.
March 5th.
But they're not willing to
Why
take
not?
it out of the,
Well, that's
my
what I'm
notes
saying,
I had
that's what-
online already, March 9th.
Well, they just you recorded it, right? So in the last meeting, I thought I heard March 5th. Just because you're coming down to like days.
How-
Nine.
how's
You're
it-
sure it's
I think it's
not?
March
What
9th.
day of the week is the ninth?
Friday.
A Friday, they have a court case on Friday?
I'm just telling you, I looked it up.
I'm asking about us somehow pushing the township to appoint an ad hoc committee. As Ralph just said, then we'll have more
No,
access.
no,
to
actually, I
some of
think
the
we should show,
We got
show
days.
at the
got
courthouse
days.
and signs.
They won't do it.
I would think the courthouse, because
Should we show
that's
up
the
at the
course is not
courthouse?
right.
Is that a
Yeah,
reasonable
because you
place?
know from a judge, because he read your letter before, maybe we write letters to the judge and say, you know, this process,
It's not fair and
There are lots
equitable
of
to the
angry people
taxpayers
show up at
of
the
Holmdel.
courthouse,
How about
that might
that?
do it.
huh? What
And
did you
people
say?
show up at the
And
courthouse.
you think the fair housing lawyer's gonna care about that?
No, the
No,
judge.
The
The
judge.
judge, do you
The
think
way-
he's gonna care about that?
Well,
Actually, he read my letter.
I mean, I'm not trying to be cute, I just don't know if he'll really care at the end.
Well,
Well, we missed the date to filing as an intervener, but nothing hurts writing letters to the judge.
I heard
And
through the
pointing out our
grapevine.
side that is not being well represented by our appointed officials.
Excuse me,
I heard through
are
the
we being
grapevine,
sued or are we not being? Is it
No.
town?
It's a
So how
legal
can we be-
process.
So how can we be an intervener?
Those are the terms in the notice to the township. That's why I'm using those words,
It's a
okay?
legal situation.
It's a legal process.
situation.
Can we
Where
be
it's
an
a contract.
intervener?
It appears, I guess, maybe
The
it's
window's
more like a
closed.
contract.
Yeah.
Well, it appears that the township committee is not doing a good enough job of
They keep
representing
using the word
associated
litigation.
ourselves.
Yeah, it's a legal process.
Well, again,
At the top of this thing here.
I'm going by the notice to the township, and it talks about, is your court case, it tells you who the other party is, and it uses the word intervener. The Fair Share Housing Center, okay, is fair and reasonable to low and moderate income households, okay? I'm just reading their words and using their
It's a legal
vocabulary.
process created by the New Jersey Supreme Court.
Correct.
correct.
And it has no basis in legislation.
The word suit means.
No.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what, during the 16-year, they call it the gap, the 16-year gap when nothing was happening, there were a lot of people trying to get rid of the COA and the.
I wouldn't say nothing was happening. A lot of lawyers made a lot of money.
Yeah, during the 16 years.
Does everyone know that the Supreme Court, was about 2 years ago, actually overruled and threw COA out?
Yeah, COA's
Yeah,
dead,
COA
right?
is
COA
COA is dead.
I thought Christie just
Christie killed
banned COA.
it. You're right, Christie killed it.
Yeah.
Not the
Christie
Supreme
killed
Court.
COA, not the court.
It just,
Well,
we use the
Chris-
word because it's easier to say it than affordable housing.
But, the court, the Supreme Court said that the Council on Affordable Housing was not fulfilling its obligation. The obligation still existed and they had to be met. And so now it is up to the courts. So any cases had to go through the judicial system and bypass this quasi other little group that was not doing its job. So,
Okay, so-
but even though, so that one group of citizens that was supposed to be establishing rules, they were not doing their job, but everything about the constitutionality of the affordable housing obligation is very clear. The courts, the Supreme Court in 2014, or in January, January 2017, it was a 6-0 decision. And a whole bunch of the judges were Christie appointees. And they all made it very clear that this affordable housing is very constitutional obligation. Taxpayers, citizens must meet it.
Okay, so actionable items for us guys is what has worked for us, and we're very, CILU is very well honed in doing this, is we write articles for the editorials, and we get it out to all the local papers. So we will do that. I urge everybody also to do that. So there are multiple opinions, and they typically like to group them together when they publish these things, okay? And it does take effect. I know I've gotten a lot of good feedback over the years about articles that I've penned and put my name to it. So it is effective, and it's a tool that has worked for us, as well as.
I think you have to get to that meeting, March 9th, it's a Friday?
Since we only have a few weeks,
Where else?
the only things I could think of is a letter writing campaign. to-
Something similar to what we did
Letter
for
writing
Cross
campaign
Farms,
to
right?
who?
A whole bunch of people
That we can send to
signed.
the judge.
We can send it, actually, if we send it to the newspaper, we can send it to the judge at the same time.
That's right.
Okay,
And,
by the way,
no, not just a letter writing campaign. We have many people write letters.
Yeah, the judge
Can I
information
just-
there is Gabriel at njcourts.gov.
Yeah, I can send it out.
I just want to get that word on the video.
Oh, sorry.
We will send the notes out later tonight, or we'll get someone to edit them.
Okay,
Okay.
Regina, what else did you want to say?
And would a petition help in this case?
Who are we petitioning?
What's the petition?
I'm not sure.
Petitions have validity when there's a specified petition process. In this case, there isn't. So it's more the question of multiple personal letters.
That'll work
Unless we do
more
a
than.
petition to our township committee that they try to think creatively.
Yeah.
Well, what we need, I think, to do
Is
the
there-
term, you need to have a structure where we try to craft some letters to the editor and also serve as a letter to the judge on March 9th.
Right.
Maybe we can provide a little bit of a framework to do that. What's the address of the judge? How soon should we get it to the judge?
How about a form letter?
Just let me answer Tony's questions, so I have it around my
Yeah,
head.
let's do a form letter.
It'll be on the email, okay? It's the Honorable Dennis R. O'Brien, J.S.C., Monmouth County Courthouse, 71 Monument Park, courtroom 210W, Freehold, New Jersey, 07728. And I already gave you the secretary's email address that takes the court clerk's email address. That'll be on the email that goes out to you. Feel free to distribute this to all your friends and family, okay? And get them to write letters, okay?
Is there, when's the next TC meeting?
27?
Is there another one, is there a TC meeting before the 9th?
Coming up 7th, that would be 2 weeks from the last meeting.
Yes, they're not waiting.
So, I mean, if you go to the TC, because of their advice from their counsel, whether you agree with it or not, they won't comment, they won't answer questions about this. If one has a simple, coherent statement, you can get it on the record, and they'll listen. They have to listen.
And it would be interesting to know how many rental units are in Holmdel already? Like what percentage of Holmdel homes are owned versus rented?
Bill Cassidy rents his house.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
People can rent their own houses, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so you're not gonna know.
Do you?
But that's just buildings with rental units, do we?
I don't
We're
think we have a
supposed- you're
single
supposed to get a
defined
CO for a
rental
rental.
building, do we?
So we
Yeah,
went
do
and checked the
either of
CO.
you folks have
Yeah.
any, what, of the
Is there-
5,500 houses, how many are rented?
rentals on,
I don't know the answer to that.
On Holmdel Road?
No, we just
Yeah, the
did
low-income
some of
housing
that
one,
today, yeah.
But that's it.
I don't know the answer to that.
Pick a number, you can do better choice than many of us.
It's pretty, I think it's low, but we do have a lot of rentals over.
On Holmdel Road, there's one building, right?
There's a
Agreeing on
bit-
that.
Yeah, and the senior center on the Ackerson track is
Yeah.
all rentals. And I don't know how many.
Those probably-
Well, I know
Those
there's
don't
4
count
of
the
them on
55.
Mulberry Lane.
Yeah, those won't count, I mean, this is where you get into details and numbers. Those won't count into the 5,500 because they're all one legal building.
Is that
What do you
true?
mean?
They all have to, they have to have a CO for each unit.
Do they, oh,
You have to have a CO for each unit, yeah.
so those would count as separate.
So I think the answer, we could maybe go to town hall and ask them how many rental
I don't
COs
know
we
if I
have.
would
Because
know.
the landlord has to pay for the CO for the tenant.
I want
Just so
to hear.
you know,
And they
the deadline to put something in the monthlies has already passed technically. If you could get something out maybe by the morning, they might squeeze it in.
They don't publish by the 1st anyways. You'd be lucky if they
Well-
publish by the 10th.
No, they publish it, the mail doesn't always get, but it might get there right before the meeting.
The patch is always easy, but, you know, how many people look at that?
Or
And
G
Two River
Walls
Times.
tap into.
The Two
Well,
River
I
Times.
use
is
the,
good
my favorite
press.
mantra is there's no one silver bullet, so we shoot a lot of bullets in a lot of different places.
As long as they're not from AK-15.
Please, let's not go there. Really, you want to bring that home? I want to thank everybody for coming. Welcome to talk. I just want to wrap up the video and shut it down and write letters and, you know, we'll publish them and send them out. Okay? Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
You did have to pay, I did out of the other meeting.
Well, just what I was.